G'day everyone, this is Sydney and this is my home. Every year millions of people come and visit our beautiful harbour, our heritage buildings and of course our beautiful parks. But there's one inner west gem that often gets overlooked, and as you turn off Darling Street just as you enter into Callan Park, it really does feel like you've just entered into a snapshot of the past. First constructed way back in the 1880s, it was officially named the Callan Park Insane Asylum, and it's since been known as both Callan Park Mental Hospital and Rozelle Hospital as well. And it's actually been said that it was constructed directly on top of a grave site containing over 100 people. And it's also been alleged that there's an unmarked grave site containing the corpses of over 1,000 patients from the asylum hidden somewhere in the park. So I guess the old age and dark past of this facility really brings with it a spooky vibe. And if you've ever spoken to anyone who works here or who has been involved with the park at all, they've always got some really interesting stories to tell. These are mine. This is Callan Park. Alrighty, so welcome back to another week of Aussie Wild. And as you probably just heard in my introduction, this isn't actually going to be a wildlife episode necessarily, but I would stay tuned anyway because some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about is actually pretty fucking wild. Like, I'm going to be giving you guys first-hand encounters about some supernatural experiences that happened to me and a couple of mates here in the Callan Park Mental Hospital over the years. But without further ado, let's get started at our first site, which is Ward 14. Now, something really bizarre happened in this building many, many years ago, probably in the early 2000s. And me and my best mate used to be really into watching horror movies. So during the winter months, because we usually played sport on the weekend, we'd try and stay in on the Friday night. So we'd go to my mate's place and we'd put on as many horror movies as we possibly could. And then we'd probably get into his mum's car and joyride about 5 minutes down the road into the Callan Park Mental Hospital, Insane Asylum, Rozelle Hospital, whatever you want to call it, but that's what we would do. And this building behind me in particular, this building actually used to have front doors that were always left unlocked. So as you can see there now, it's just a big sheet of plywood that's stopping anyone from getting in there. But before, that was just two unlocked doors that you could pretty much just walk straight into. Now, for the story, let's get started. So on this particular night, I remember that we watched the movie House on the Haunted Hill, and we also watched the movie Paranormal Activity. So there's this weird scene in House on the Haunted Hill where the lady walks into a room and she's just walking in and there's just a hospital bed in front of her with nothing switched on, no one's on it, it's just a plain strap-in hospital bed. But then as she looks down into the camera, there's two surgeons operating on this lady that's screaming, strapped into the hospital bed. And then when she looks away from the camera again, there's no one there. So visualize that quickly, and then imagine walking through these two doors into an old mental hospital. Now in the first room, there was nothing in the first room. But as you moved into the second room, straight in front of you, there was a strap-in hospital bed with 6 or 7 strap-in hospital wheelchairs looking straight at us. Now, that would have scared the shit out of most people. And don't get me wrong, it scared the shit out of me. Like, I'm still scared about that moment today. But we also watched Paranormal Activity that night. So that didn't put a dampener on our evening. We continued our little ghost walk. And as you walk down there, there's a corridor that goes into a kitchen or into a scullery. So in Paranormal Activity, there's this bizarre scene where she's just sitting in the kitchen and then all of a sudden, every pantry door, every pot, every pan, every plate just goes bang. And it just explodes out of the cupboards all over the kitchen. Just boof. So now visualize that. We walk down the corridor, into the kitchen, into the scullery, and let's just say no one's been in this building for the last 50 years even. 50 years there's probably just been pots and pans just stacked up on this kitchen bench. And as we walked into that kitchen, everything on the kitchen bench just flew off. And then me, my brother and my best mate just piss bolted out of these doors, up this alleyway here, and then down the street. And the funny thing was, we were parked about 100 meters away. And at the time, my mate was a much better runner than I was. So if there was a zombie or anything chasing after us, look who would have gotten eaten. I would have been that fat guy that got left behind. But just imagine that. In this building, there was 6 or 7 strap-in wheelchairs with a strap-in hospital bed facing us, and every pot and pan flew off the kitchen bench in the kitchen or in the scullery. So that's the first story that I'm going to tell you guys about Callan Park and about some bizarre experiences that happened here in Callan Park. And that was Ward 14, building number 404. So that was probably back in 2006, 2007. And that's the end of that story. But lucky for us, the next story is just down there, just around that corner. And I'm not gonna lie, it is so easy to see why I chose to do this movie during the day. I mean, this place is fucking terrifying. Like, look at it. It's just a bunch of fenced up, dilapidated, old insane asylums that have probably been left untouched for the last sort of 20 or 25 years. Like, these are just fenced up, dilapidated buildings that used to house mental patients. Tell me that's not scary. And if you came here at night, you would understand exactly what it feels like. It feels like you're being watched like 24/7. That's scary as well. There's a currawong in that tree just up there. That's like the scariest thing to this day. Anyway, the start of the next story is just behind this fence here. And if you look through there, there is a little opening that goes straight underneath this building. So this is where that story starts. Now, I came here that night with the same friend, but on that particular night, I came down here with this camera, and I brought this here with me just to show you what I was using on the night. It's an old Canon EOS 350D, and it's got a pop-up automatic flash. So basically, whenever you're trying to focus on something at night, the flash pops up and it just shoots really, really vibrant flashes repeatedly into the area that it's trying to focus on until it finds that focal point. So I shone that flash underneath that basement, and I don't know what it is. To this day, I still have no idea. Could have been a possum, could have been a fox, but what it was, it sounded like a Tasmanian devil. Now imagine this, pitch black, me and my mate standing next to each other, and I shine this flash underneath that cellar. Bzzz, bzzz, and I just hear, rawr, 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 rawr. Now, if that didn't scare you, I don't know what will. So it took me about 2 or 3 seconds to figure out what had just happened. And when I couldn't comprehend what made that noise, me and my mate just piss bolted in that same direction that we went the last time, because we sort of found our favorite parking spot. And once again, I got left for dead. So if there was something under there, it would have ripped me to bloody shreds, and I would have been left behind like that fat bloke once again. But that, to this day, I still don't know what it was. So I'm gonna say possum or fox, but it could have sounded like any zombie movie that you've ever watched. It was so, so scary. Anyway, next story. Just have a look at this currawong. That's red eye. All right, so I don't really want the whole video to be completely spookified, but I thought I'd just throw in a little bit of information about the park's history. So if you've ever been here before and you're wondering why there's so much grassland, so much parkland, and just so much free roaming space available to the public, well, let me give you a rundown about why that is. So back in 1878, when this joint first opened, they believed in something known as asylum landscape theory. And that basically meant that the doctors believed that people would benefit from a treatment method known as moral therapy. And what that actually meant was that doctors at the time believed that mental health patients or mental illness suffering patients would benefit from living in a more rural setting, sort of farming the land, growing vegetables, and just being in a more quiet environment as opposed to being in a big city with big walls separating each other. So much, in fact, that they actually used these large open spaces as a buffering zone between wards, as opposed to actually building high wall fences and high wall prison-like environments. And just a little bit of trivia for you guys, the parkland that I'm actually standing in right now, which is quite close to the Kirkland building front entrance, this was actually used as farmland and exercise grounds for the patients that used to come here way back in like 1878. So back, 150 years ago, there would have been cattle, there would have been hens, there would have been goats, there would have been sheep, there would have even been vegetable gardens and just patients working the land to try and improve their mental conditions. And on that note, there's birds swooping around me. It's really spooky around here. I've had minor birds trying to swoop me, kookaburras looking at me. I've had 3 magpies in the background, and I think it's time that I go to the next site. All right, you guys, just wait until we get to the next site. It's an absolute belter as well. I mean, it's a little bit of a drive, but bear with me, it's worth the wait. Here we go. So we just pulled up at my 3rd spot, and before I actually jump out of the car and show you this building, I just thought I'd give you a quick rundown about why this building was so scary. Now, nothing scary necessarily happened to me inside this building, but this used to be a really, really big feral cat population. So anytime you came to this park at night and you shone your flashlight or your high beams or anything towards this building, you would just get like 20 to 25 cat eye reflections just looking straight back at you. And I'm not talking about little, like, cute little cats. I'm talking about big tomcats with those really deep, like, those sorts of cats. Now, I did go into this building at one point in time, and I'll show you the entrance and stuff like that shortly, but it was actually quite frightening inside this building, just with the smells. There was cats and stuff just bolting out in front of you. It's a really, really freaky place. The fact that this is still so close to my house and so close to the city, it's amazing that these buildings are still standing and still have so many stories to tell. But I'll get out and give you a quick look at this building. All right, let's have a look at this beast then, shall we? Okay, so as you can see over there, asbestos. This property is protected by security, hazardous materials, keep out, no access. And as you can see, they've got security cameras set up now. So, as I said, this place was petrifying just because of what it had inside it. So it had lots of feral cats, lots of gross smells, lots of weird noises, but just have a look at the entrance into that building. If that's not a haunted house, I don't know what is. So I went in there one night and there was just cats bloody everywhere. I reckon I counted 40 cats inside this building, just running around, free roaming. And everyone always tells me, oh, you don't get feral cats in Sydney or this close to the city. Our native wildlife's fine because we don't have feral cats this close to the city. But let me tell you, there are places like this that still house feral cats. But one thing I will say is recently, they got rid of the feral cat population here. And as far as I'm aware, there's no feral cats left in this building. So I will show you. That's what the front of the building looks like. And as you can see, that whole front end of that building is just petrifying to look at. So imagine going inside and being surrounded by like 40 feral cats. It's wild to think that that was only like 20 years ago, but they're all gone now as far as I can tell. Yeah, as I said, people always tell me, oh, our native wildlife's fine. We don't get feral cats in Sydney or this close to the city. But let me tell you, there's still places like this out there that house feral cats. That's 100% guaranteed. This place just got lucky and we had those feral cats cleaned out. I can't believe that this place is still standing though, because when I went inside it, it was like dilapidated as, and that was 20 years ago. So if they don't do some reconstruction shortly, this place might not be here for much longer. Just as it starts raining and makes it even more bloody terrifying. Just have a look at the front of that building. Oof. That is intimidating, just that spot right there. Now imagine it with 20 feral cats sitting on the veranda and on the roof there. Wild spot. Alright, so I just arrived at the next site, and this one is a little bit different in a way because it's sort of fenced off from the rest of Callan Park. So I'm here entirely by myself and it's really spooky, it's really quiet, and it just started raining. So I'm going to do this as quickly as possible just to show some respect to whatever spirits may live here. But let me show you what I've got around me. So I've got a big tree, I've got a fenced off building that's been fenced off for bloody years, at least 30 years. And that right there is what I'm talking about. So this is one of my favorite buildings, simply because we didn't actually know about this place until much later down the track. So we used to drive around Callan Park all the time for many years at night, and it often sounded like someone was playing music. And I know that sounds a bit weird and a bit bizarre, but let me get to the point of this story. So basically, one day we got pulled over by the Secchi. So they employed like nighttime security officers to pull over people that looked like they were up to no good or causing a ruckus or doing graffiti or any of that sort of stuff. Anyway, one night he pulled us up just to see what we were up to. And we go, mate, have you heard like that music that's been playing tonight? And he goes, oh brother, you've got to see this room. And he took us up here, and just behind that wall there's a grand piano, and he used to tell us that often at nights, the cleaners, the caretakers, and all those sorts of people, they would hear a grand piano playing Mozart symphonies and stuff like that right behind that door, and even while they were inside the building. So this to me is one of the most haunted buildings in Callan Park. So I'm going to do this as quick as possible, and I'm just going to leave in peace. But isn't that bizarre? Like, there didn't used to be boards in front of that, and you could actually see the piano, and that's what I was hoping for, but it looks like they've covered them all up. But imagine that, you're just walking through here at night, there's a little walkway, and then all of a sudden, just behind you, the grand piano just starts playing Mozart symphonies with no one sitting at it. Oh, mate, there's some really strange things that happen in this park, I'm telling you right now, but that is one of my favorites. Okay, so I'm just about to leave and it's just started raining, which is already creepy enough in itself. But have a look at what I've just noticed on one of the doors here behind this fence. There's piano keys stuck to that door with like a barred up window. Mate, it's things like that that just send a shiver down my spine. So I'm gonna get the heck out of here before things get any weirder, eh? Oh my God, the old piano room, eh? All right, so there's nothing really scary about this spot other than the mosquitoes, if they could just fuck off for a second. But this is probably one of my favorite spots in the whole park. And you actually have to walk through this spot, which is known as Secret Garden, to get to my next spot, which is pretty much a vivid childhood memory for me of Callan Park. This is where we used to go and this is where we used to go as kids, like really little kids. And if you have a look around, it's more something that you would probably expect to see in the Daintree rainforest as opposed to like 5 minutes outside the Sydney CBD. But this is definitely one of my favourite spots in the whole park, other than the fact that we're directly under a flight path. But have a look at this place. It's beautiful. Little bridges, little river, little stream going both ways. It's a really stunning little place. But we've got to go this direction. So the next spot is an interesting story, but it stuck with me because I saw it when I was probably like 3 or 4 years old. And have a look at this bridge. This is nice too. I have not been here in years. Such a beautiful little spot. All right, so as promised, here we are at our next spot. And this is not one that actually happened to me as an adult. This is something that's stuck with me since I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I was born in 1991, and this place stopped being a mental hospital at about 1994. And I think there was still patients here probably up until 1995, 6, 7. So I think when I was about 4 or 5, this probably happened to me. So this here is just outside of the secret garden that I just showed you. And we used to come in here to collect tadpoles as kids. Yes, it's against the law now, we all know that, but there was nothing like a kid collecting a tadpole and then competing with his brother to see whose tadpole would metamorphose and get back legs before the other one. Anyway, we used to release the fully grown adult frogs back into this spot so we didn't disrupt the ecosystem too much. But that's not the sort of horror story that I'm talking about here. So imagine being a 4 or 5-year-old kid collecting tadpoles, and then just up there on that hill, there was a completely insane woman running around back and forth screaming, "Ah, ah, ah, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it." Getting chased by a nurse with a syringe in their hand going, "Get back here, get back here, get back here." So I was like a 4 or 5-year-old kid watching that, and it was like, okay, maybe there's more to this place than meets the eye. So we didn't really come back to get tadpoles that much after that, but it definitely was something that stuck with me for like most of my life up until now. Haven't really thought about it until recently because I didn't really think about putting this video together until recently. But just imagine this, tadpoles, and then 20 meters away, a screaming crazy lady getting chased by a nurse with a syringe. It's definitely something that's going to sit with a 3 or 4-year-old or a 4 or 5-year-old for the rest of their life, sure. Boom! Anyway, that's one story from here, and we'll move on to the next place. All right, hold on a second. Did I just run through a bloody mental hospital with tomato sauce all over my face, wearing a lab coat, screaming? Holy shit, maybe I'm just a patient with a GoPro. All right, guys, I hate to do it to you, but on that note, I'm going to have to call this episode here because there's just so many things that I wanted to include into today's episode, and there's still like 5 or 6 left over. So I'm just going to have to put it into a part 2 episode. And I don't know if I told you at all during this episode, but there was actually tunnels that went under Callan Park Mental Hospital, which transported patients from their cells or their wards down to the water's edge for some like walk around time. And I'm going to try and tee up a tour with someone that works here. So hopefully I can put that into part 2. And I also didn't mention that along with the feral cat population, there's a huge feral fox population in this park. So I want to come back here at night with one of my mates, not only show you the sights that we've seen throughout this episode, but also try and catch some of these foxes on camera. And I think that would be really cool. So stay tuned for part 2. And if you liked this episode, be sure to like and subscribe my YouTube channel because it's going to be where I post most of my content from now on, considering that during the time that I was sick, Instagram just turned into a bit of a cesspit. So I'll see you guys in part 2 of this episode. I really hope you enjoyed learning about Callan Park, and I hope I didn't scare you too much. So take care, and I'll catch you next week for part 2.